Hey, David Brewster here with an episode of Breaking Chords, and this is Classical-Style Arpeggios. And I've had a lot of students over the years ask, how do I tap into these classical, chord progressions and themes and melodic ideas? And that extends into arpeggios, string skipping and sweeping and tapping. And there's a lot you can unveil, studying some of the habits and compositional techniques from the masters. And by the masters, I mean the famous classical composers from hundreds of years ago, Bach and Mozart and Beethoven and Chopin and Paganini and Vivaldi and the gang. And there's a lot you can learn from those guys because they definitely kind of taught the world, how you can approach music and construct things in a very unique and melodic and interesting way. To get started here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to compare the natural minor scale, which the modal name is Aeolian. And we're going to compare Aeolian to the harmonic minor scale. And the bulk of what we're going to look at is going to revolve around that harmonic minor tonality, which that's very common in classical music, but you can hear that in metal and rock and jazz and a lot of different styles of music. So this chart I'm getting ready to flash shows the natural minor scale spelled out in the key of A, and then right below that there's the harmonic minor scale. And the main thing to really pay attention to is the seventh, and we've talked about this in other episodes from Scales and Tales and Three for All and some different lessons on this channel. But we're going to raise the seventh, which in natural minor would be G, to G sharp, which is what you'll find in the harmonic minor scale. And we're going to definitely tap into this, and we're going to harmonize the scale and build chords, and then turn those into arpeggios, and then the next thing you know, you're going to start playing, progressions using arpeggios, which is going to give it a very classical kind of sound and influence, and then you'll be off and running. Now what we're going to do is take the harmonic minor scale and harmonize it, which means we're just going to take each note and build a chord off of each note. And normally in a harmonized harmonic minor scale, the third chord would be augmented, but we're going to change that for this lesson, and I'm just going to revert that back to a regular major chord. So a harmonized A harmonic minor scale arranged this way would be like this: A minor, and then B diminished. Here's the three chord, so we're going to just play C major. That would normally be C augmented. We're just going to flip it back to C major. And D minor would be the 4 chord. E major would be the 5 chord. F major is the 6 chord. And then G sharp diminished is the 7th chord. And now we're back at A minor again. Something like that. And the main reason we've kind of modified the third is I didn't really want to dip into augmented arpeggios. I just wanted to keep it real basic, major, minor, and diminished. Dive in here. What we're going to do is we're going to transform those chords into arpeggios. And definitely you can sweep these, using some Yngwie, sweep shapes, or you could tap them. You could even revert back to just using like open position chords and bar chords and pick through the chords as arpeggios. But I've selected string skipping as the method of, kind of tapping into these arpeggio ideas. And what we're going to do is start with A minor, the 1 chord. And I've put it right here. So we're going to be, kind of centered around the 12th position. And with each of these arpeggios, when we start moving through these progressions and grabbing, different tonalities and sounds, I'm going to try to keep it in the same neighborhood. I don't really want to move around the fretboard a lot. I just want to connect, in the same basic area. So A minor would be right here. There's your A, C, and E. Skip over the G, and then you've got A and C on the B string right there, like this. So there's the 1 chord, A minor. Now if we move to the next set of strings and start on D, we'll locate the 4 chord, which is D minor. And we can use the same fingering and the same shape just on the next set of strings, like this. So there's D minor, your D, F, A, D, and F there on the high E string, skipping over that B string. So now let's move between the 1 and the 4 chord like this. Now let's move from the 1 chord to the 5 chord. So that would be A minor to E major. And for the E major shape, we can locate it right here. Just start on E on the 14th fret there on the D string. There's your E, G sharp, and B, and then E and G sharp on the high E. And we're still skipping over that B string like this. So now move between the 1 and the 5. And let's weave between those. So let's go from the 1 to the 4, and then the 1 to the 5, like this. Now let's flip that backwards and do 1, 5, 1, 4, just to see what it sounds like. Pretty cool, and you can definitely start weaving and mixing, those around. Let's introduce another chord to the mix, and we're going to add B diminished. So now we're going to move from the 1 to the 2, and that would be B diminished, in the key of A minor. And we can find a string skipping, B diminished shape right here. And there you've got B on the 14th fret on the A, D and F on the D string, and then B and D on the B, and we're skipping over the G. So here's B diminished. So now let's move, 1 to 2, like this. And then you can start kind of incorporating that in different progressions. So now let's do a 1, 2, 1, 4. So A minor, B diminished, A minor, D minor, like this. Really cool sound. And I like, kind of blurring and mixing those chords around and kind of making these progressions. So now let's do that again and do a 1, 2, 1, but now let's go to the 5 chord at the end and see what that sounds like. Really cool. Now, let's do a 1, 2, 4, 5 and see what that sounds like. We're slowly starting to kind of create these really interesting sounds and tonalities. So now let's do a 1, 4, 2, 5, just to mix it around even more. Pretty cool stuff. Now let's do a 1, 5, 2, 4, just to exhaust, some different variations here. And you can definitely sit there and play, and experiment and combine those in different ways. Now we're going to add another chord to the mix. So we're going to add the 6th chord, F major. And we can actually recycle the same arpeggio we had for E major, just move it up a half step. And you'll have F major right here. So there's F, A, and C, and then F and A there on the high E string like this. So now let's do a 1, 6, A minor, F major. And then we can start adding and kind of mixing some of the previous chords we already had. So let's do A minor, F major, A minor, E major, or a 1, 6, 1, 5, and see what happens. Pretty cool. Now let's do 1, 6, 5, 1, and we're just going to move from the 6 to the 5 consecutively like this. And we can definitely start creating some different variations. Let's do a 1, 6, 2, 5, which is a very common progression. And this would be, A minor, F major, B diminished, E major, like this. Pretty cool territory. We're kind of flirting with these really interesting sounds. And let's include the D minor arpeggio. So now let's do a 1, 6, 4, 5 and see what happens. So that's A minor, F major, D minor, E major, like this. Pretty cool. Now we're going to do kind of a kitchen sink progression here, and we're going to do A minor, D minor, B diminished, F major, E major. So that's a 1, 4, 2, 6, 5, like this. And as you can see in here, I'm just kind of playing around with those arpeggios and the chords in this key, but it creates these really interesting, tonalities, and it definitely has a very classical, kind of influence. And you can find this, in Baroque period classical music and classical period, and definitely you can hear it in more modern, music forms and guitar, piano, violin. You can find it everywhere. But that's a pretty cool progression right there. And you can see I moved from F to E, kind of quickly, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. And that's pretty common in classical music too. You'll hear a lot of kind of quick changes like that between the chords. Let's add the third. Now we're going to add C major. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, normally the third chord in harmonic minor harmonized would be augmented. But I didn't really want to worry about, augmented string skipping and augmented, arpeggios. So we're just going to treat that as C major instead of C augmented. So a 1, 3, that would be A minor. And then for C major, we can do a couple different things here. We could basically revert back to this E major, and F major shape that we had, but relocate that back, to where you have the C note there on the 10th fret on the D, and there's your C, E, G, C, and E up on the high E string there, like this. And you could also, take that F major arpeggio and just move everything up a set of strings. And there's your C, E, G, C, E right here. So that's kind of a choose your own adventure, situation, because if you're playing, maybe A minor or D minor, you might want to use that lower C major shape. If you're playing with F or B, diminished, or E, you may want to use that higher C shape. So let's try, A minor to C major, a 1, 3 progression, like this. And let's start, adding those other chords to the mix. So let's do a 1, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to do A minor, C major, D minor, E major, like this. Pretty cool. It's got a great sound too. So now let's try a 1, 4, 3, 5. So we're going to do A minor, D minor, C major, E major, like this. Something like that. And then let's do like a kitchen sink, progression. Let's do all of these chords that we've looked at so far. So let's do A minor, F major, and then D minor, B diminished, and then C major, E major. So that's a 1, 6, 2, or I'm sorry, 1, 6, 4, 2, 3, 5. So that's complicated. 1, 6, 4, 2, 3, 5, like this. And one more time there, A minor, F major, D minor, B diminished, C major, and then E major. Pretty cool. Alright, so if you're playing along at home and really paying attention, you should have noticed that we've used 6 of the 7 chords from that harmonized harmonic minor scale in the key of A. So now we're going to introduce the 7th, which is G sharp diminished. And we can actually recycle that same, B diminished shape we had for the 2 chord, B diminished. Just hike that back to where you've got that G sharp. And now you've got G sharp, B and D, G sharp and B there on the B string, like this. So let's do a 1-7. So A minor, G sharp diminished. And now let's move, 1-7, 1-2. So we're going to basically surround that A minor arpeggio with, G sharp diminished and B diminished too. And there's a certain guitarist most of you are very familiar with that loves to do this, and that's Yngwie, of course, Yngwie Malmsteen. He loves taking, say an A minor arpeggio right here, and then he'll play G sharp diminished, A minor, and then move up and basically grab, B diminished too. But he loves doing that, kind of putting, diminished bookends around a minor arpeggio. And there's lots of classical, composers and music that features this too. So this definitely has a very authentic sound. So now we're going to do 1-7, 1-2, like this. Pretty cool sound. Now let's try mixing things up even more. Okay, so almost every example we've had so far, every example we have had, it's not almost, but every example we started with the 1 chord, A minor. So let's just change it around a little bit. Let's start on the 4 chord. Let's do a 4-2-7-1. So that's D minor, B diminished, G sharp diminished, and then A minor. And this is just to kind of shake things up, like this. One more time there. Really cool sound, and I like that too, where your ear is kind of along for the ride and you kind of hear it resolve back to the 1. And that's an important thing to remember when you start experimenting with this and creating your own ideas. You don't have to start on the 1 chord. You could start on any of those, and then you could put the 1 somewhere in the middle. You don't necessarily have to have it at the end. And you can definitely just start weaving and mixing these around in different orders. So let's try another one. We're going to basically do a 7-2 3-5. So we're going to do G sharp diminished, B diminished, and then we're going to move up to C major and then E major. So one more time there, and there's the 7. Then you hear it go up, just like diminished arpeggios normally go up. There's B. And then C major. And then just move over diagonally, and there's E major. Really cool. Now we're going to finish with a kitchen sink once again. And we're going to do this kind of, very typical sound that you hear in classical music, and it's going to have this forward momentum. And the forward momentum is going to come from us moving from 7 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And at the end, we're going to do 6 to 5. So that's going to be G sharp diminished, A minor, B diminished, C major, D minor, and then F major, E major, and then you end back on A minor again. Something like this. And this obviously is a huge, chord progression, but it's just kind of, exposing how you can definitely create these massive progressions and cycles of all these arpeggios, like this. All right, one more time there. That's going to wrap this episode of Breaking Chords. And keep in mind, we just basically attacked A Harmonic Minor and fleshed it out, and created chords, based from the single notes from the scale. Created chords and then just started kind of mixing and matching the chords together using arpeggios. So, you could revert back to just regular chords and create chord progressions that way. Or you could, apply this idea to other, keys and scales and tonalities. You could use the major scale or natural minor or melodic minor or, modal progressions. You can kind of map out, Dorian or Lydian or something and, approach this the same way using a different, sequence of notes and a different tonality. And this is really interesting. It kind of gives you like a bird's eye view and an even, playing field where you can see the chords and the key, and you start kind of mixing and matching and kind of combining them together and just experimenting, with chords in music and chords, in a key. So it's kind of eye-opening, but it's very, very common in classical music, but you can definitely find this in, metal and rock and jazz and fusion and lots of styles of music. So anyway, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content material. Thank you.